Myles Garrett in a 49ers uniform. A trade might be more possible than ever now after the Browns executed an unusual restructure of his contract. And we'll delve into that, but first let's remember that Diamondre Lenoir was already trying to lure Garrett to the 49ers last year. I think he asked him what kind of animal he wants to be, because the 49ers already have a hyena. They've got a bear in Nick Bosa, and Myles Garrett in a 49ers uniform. I think it would look good. The contract part of this is fascinating, and let's remember what the 49ers are doing. They are stockpiling as much near-term salary cap space and pushing hits into the future so that they have the flexibility to make splash moves. They've already made many splash trades in the past, including the one for Christian McCaffrey. But we should delve into what exactly it would cost to pick up Myles Garrett. First, some background. Last offseason, Myles Garrett demanded a trade away from Cleveland in writing. He said that he wanted to go somewhere where he had a better chance to win football games. But the Browns were able to extinguish that fire by giving Garrett more money. $160 million over 4 years on his new contract, worth up to $40 million per year. And it looked like that new deal would have very limited trade maneuverability, since a roster bonus, a large one, would be due on the 15th day of each league year. That 15th day of this league year was March 25th, Wednesday, or yesterday. But right before that bonus was set to exercise, Garrett and the Browns agreed to push back the day, not just this season, but in subsequent seasons, several months. The new exercise date is now 7 days before the start of the regular season, which means that Myles Garrett is not due his $29.2 million option bonus for 2026 until September. He's not due his $39.4 million option bonus for 2027 until September of 2027. And there's a $21.4 million option bonus in 2028. So basically, the money did not hit the salary cap for Myles Garrett, at least the money from these large bonuses, until much closer to the regular season, which allows Cleveland to feel a lot better about potentially moving him, because the money would be on another team's books.
Yeah, I feel like there were a lot of ops. Well, there seemed like a lot of ops, with how close it was. But, he likes getting out on time, or, he sees me and credit to him, he also avoided the rush pretty well, too. So him getting the ball out on time.
On top of that, the Browns have also proposed a rules change that would allow teams to trade draft picks up to 5 years in advance instead of the existing 3 years in advance. And this seemed to coincide with their redo of Myles Garrett's deal to make the trade window much larger. So you can put 2 and 2 together and surmise that maybe Cleveland wants some more flexibility to cash in on one of the most valuable assets in the league. 49ers perspective, they are hoarding salary cap space. Take a look at San Francisco's salary cap picture, which I keep here on the sheet. Right now, I have them projected at $18 million for the 2026 season. But if they can restructure Trent Williams' deal, which I think they're going to need to do, this deal was never meant to be played on in 2026. It was going to have to be redone, likely with an extension. Well, that's something that could open up over $20 million of near-term space for the 49ers. So you'd be looking at about $40 million in salary cap space for this season for San Francisco. And it just so happens that if the 49ers were to somehow acquire Myles Garrett, the cost for this season would actually fit within the roof of their salary cap as it stands right now. It'd be $9.14 million for Myles Garrett as a 2026 salary cap hit. Why? Because that $29.2 million option bonus, which doesn't hit until 7 days before the start of the regular season, would be prorated over 5 years. It'd be stretched out like an accordion against the salary cap, just like all of the 49ers' other contracts. Every single other big money contract, from Brock Purdy's to Nick Bosa's, even to the Trent Williams contract, is stretched out with signing and option bonus prorations to lessen the blow against the salary cap now. So this is how the 49ers do business. And the Browns just restructured Myles Garrett's deal in a way that would fit with it, how the 49ers do like to manage their salary cap year over year. So we can talk about the football aspect now, and then we could also talk about potential trade compensation here. It obviously would be a massive, massive overinvestment for the 49ers, I should say, and maybe not overinvestment on the field, but in terms of their finances, they would pour more money into the edge rusher position than they have ever paid, because they already have a full other year guaranteed right now for Nick Bosa, but there's only a nominal amount of less than $1 million guaranteed for Nick Bosa in 2027. So their long-term plans at edge rusher are not solidified. I think in the short term, though, you would think dual edge for San Francisco, Bosa and Myles Garrett. Now, it is not unheard of for the 49ers to have large resources committed in both edge rushing positions. In fact, that's how they built the initial gold rush in 2019. You had Bosa on one edge, first-round draft pick, number 2 overall, behind only Kyler Murray, with D Ford. Second-round draft pick, went to Kansas City. D Ford got a big contract with the 49ers worth about $20 million annually. So San Francisco has put in massive, massive edge rusher investment in the past, and I don't think that it would be beyond them to decide to pour extra large resources into that position moving forward if they felt that this was something that could not only make them better now, but with Myles Garrett where he's at right now, I'm sure that he's got a few more prime years left in his career. I mean, he's just came off of a 23 sack, a record season for Cleveland. I mean, the man is an absolute monster. You look at Myles Garrett now, I think that you can safely assume that the rest of his contract is going to be productive football, even if he does start to creep into his 30s. It would, however, mark the largest allocation of money ever for the 49ers into the edge rusher position. So just because something is salary cap affordable in the near term doesn't necessarily mean that it fits into the 49ers' plans in the long term, and they would have to stretch their budget for the long term, because as you can see, they are stretching things like an accordion into the future, but they have escalating costs when we move into the long term. For example, the 49ers in 2027 already have $344 million in total salary cap liabilities, and that is across only 40 contracts. So the salary cap price per player for 2027 is significantly higher than it is here in 2026, where there are only $322 million of total salary cap liabilities. So San Francisco has used this cost escalation method very, very aggressively, and I compare it to the sink system, right? Every single season is a sink, and the 49ers have to make sure that the water doesn't run over the lip of the sink in any given season. Pipes connect the sinks. Unused salary cap space carries over from season to season. Even if Myles Garrett would cost only a little bit more than $9 million on the 2026 salary cap, you would still have to account in for carryover for the 49ers, and you want to leave that cushion as large as possible to account for 2027 prices. And of course, they're going to get more and more expensive for Myles Garrett with the subsequent option bonuses as time goes on, and there still is quite a bit of guaranteed money left on his deal. $41.7 million guaranteed in 2027. So if you acquire Myles Garrett right now, you owe him the $31.5 million guaranteed in 2026 and over $41 million guaranteed in 2027. $70 million plus guaranteed over 2 years before you could really get out of this deal. And obviously there still would be dead money because you'd be paying him in staggered roster bonus fashion, and that accordion has to collapse if you did ever jettison the player, who, by the way, has a no trade clause. So he'd have to okay going anywhere, and I'm sure he'd be okay with going to the 49ers. It's a matter of, will the 49ers be able to pay up for something like this? And I'm sure there's going to be interest from a lot of the league if the Browns are, in fact, willing to do this. You talk about potential cost. Well, Micah Parsons went for an absolute king's ransom last year from the Cowboys to the Green Bay Packers. 2 first-round picks and Kenny Clark, a premium defensive tackle. Would the Myles Garrett asking price be even higher from the Cleveland Browns? Potentially. We'll see where the market leads us, but it definitely would cost first-round draft capital. And they're already talking about the 2027 NFL draft as being one of the best events in a long time. I mean, it supposedly is just going to be loaded with talent. Now, the draft is always a projection, and a lot of people get ahead of themselves when it comes to the NFL draft. I even had a post this morning where I cited some of the thought process of the great Bill Walsh. The draft is a crapshoot. In many ways, it is a lottery. And even if it's projected to be strong, it doesn't necessarily have to be all that great. But we do see some teams starting to circle the wagons and trying to accumulate ammo for that 2027 draft, which is perceived to be better than the 2026 draft. One way to bypass the draft process is to try to go for a sure thing. And if that's where the 49ers' heads are at, and they're in an opposite spot of where the Browns are at, if the Browns want the lottery tickets for 2027, if they want to maximize the value of Myles Garrett now, and the 49ers say, well, we think with this exploding NFL salary cap, we'll be able to afford more and more, and we'd rather get somebody who's going to be really damn good for sure over the next at least 2 or 3 years. 2 would be the minimum amount of time that Myles Garrett would have to be a superstar for anything like this to make sense, given the guaranteed money. Well, maybe you are willing to give up some future draft capital. It's funny because we've been talking about the 49ers defense and their youth movement. And I think that they've actually set their defense up to absorb a significant veteran addition. Last offseason, they used their first 5 draft picks on the defensive side of the ball. First time since 1981 that the 49ers had done that. So, of course, they got significantly younger defensively. They're now the 3rd youngest defense in all of football. Meanwhile, San Francisco's offense is the oldest in the entire league. We know that a modernization of the offense is coming at some point in the not too distant future. Maybe even starting this NFL draft, the 49ers will go heavy on the youngsters offensively. Maybe we see them draft 4 straight offensive players out of the gate. There's no telling right now, but we do know what they did last year, and that was push all in draft-wise on the defense. Well, if the offense is up next for a modernization, then perhaps the defense is up next for a veteran fortification. In fact, we might have already seen a little bit of a flyer take on that front when the 49ers re-added Dre Greenlaw. But that was a small commitment. That was 1 year at a discount price, only $6 million. Somebody like Myles Garrett, of course, that would be less likely because it would be a much bigger ticket operation. However, when you're talking about the single season sacks king in the entire NFL, when you're talking about somebody as good as Myles Garrett, somebody who the 49ers obviously respect immensely as one of the greats to ever play this game. You remember where John Lynch came from, Tampa Bay. Their success was rooted in the front four. Remember what the 49ers did in 2019 and in some of those early Kasarik years. The success was rooted in an overpowering front. We know San Francisco's philosophy, the 4-down Tampa 2 philosophy defensively. Well, you would never say no to more edge rushers and more powerful, good pass rushing defensive linemen who could affect that quarterback and make everyone better. You would never say no if you could get a price that could fit. And the challenge would be finding a price that could fit. But this recent restructure for Myles Garrett, agreed to by both Garrett and obviously the Cleveland Browns, it makes it more possible by pushing those roster bonus trigger dates later, which would mean that money is offloaded along with the trade to the acquiring team at a later date, making a trade window much wider. It then comes down to the willingness and the ability of a suitor to absorb the contract, and the 49ers have consistently worked to push cap hits down the road to maximize their near-term flexibility. They've made big trades before in the past. Christian McCaffrey came over midseason. We know that they've been interested in the likes of Max Crosby. Well, now we'll see if the 49ers might be interested in Myles Garrett if he does indeed become available. They've already been interested in the past. Diamante Lenore has talked about it. And then we saw what happened in Cleveland this past year. Brock Purdy, Myles Garrett, a lot of respect for each other, some smiles on the field. I think there was even a little bit of a handshake or a fist bump after one of the times where Brock Purdy was able to get rid of the ball before Myles was able to get to him. Well, you don't have to play Cleveland all that often, so you don't have to worry about facing Myles all too often. But boy, would it sure be a boon to have Myles Garrett on one side and Nick Bosa on the other.